Sophie Cunningham's rise to stardom as the most searched female athlete. Crazy enough, she surpassed Caitlin Clark.
You think you know the story of the 2025 WNBA season. You think it was about records, or TV deals, or the continued dominance of the Indiana Fever. But if you look closely, if you peel back the layers of the glossy broadcasts and look at the raw data of what people were actually doing on their phones late at night, you realize that's not the story at all. The real story of 2025 isn't about the face of the league. It's about the woman standing right next to her. It's about a digital coup, a mechanism of fame so precise and so unexpected that it baffled marketing experts and algorithm engineers alike. We witnessed a paradigm shift in how we consume sports, transitioning from a product driven by athleticism to a digital ecosystem driven by pure, unfiltered narrative friction. And at the epicenter of this shift wasn't Caitlin Clark. It was the woman hired to protect her. This is the story of the Sophie Cunningham Phenomenon. To understand how a role player, someone who averaged fewer than 10 points a game, managed to eclipse the biggest star in women's basketball history in search volume, we have to look at the numbers. They don't lie, but they do tell a ghost story. In 2024, Caitlin Clark was the number 7 most searched athlete in the United States. That made sense. She was the rookie, the phenomenon, the singular force of gravity. But fast forward to Google's year in search for 2025, and something bizarre happened. Caitlin Clark was still the economic engine, sure, but at that coveted number 7 spot, it wasn't Clark anymore. It was Sophie Cunningham. Let that sink in. The 7th most searched athlete in America. She was sitting in an elite echelon alongside global icons. She was ranking next to Shedeur Sanders during his NFL draft hype. She was trading blows with Terrence Crawford, the pound-for-pound boxing king. She was right there with Micah Parsons. For a role player to assume this spot implies a massive transfer of viral curiosity. While Clark settled into the role of the established superstar, a known quantity whose biography we've all memorized, Cunningham emerged as the unknown variable. She became the glitch in the matrix that millions of new fans sought to decode. The data suggests that search volume in 2025 was driven less by on-court excellence, where Clark dominates, and more by narrative friction and discovery. Fans were flooding search engines to answer specific burning questions. Who is the blonde player pushing people around? What did she say about Travis Kelce? Is she really leaving the WNBA for a startup league? This metric flip is the foundational hook. It proves that in the algorithmic era, being the main character of the day's drama can be just as valuable, if not more valuable, than being the MVP. But to understand how Cunningham arrived at this position of influence, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to analyze the architecture of the trade that brought her to Indiana in the first place. On February 2025, the Indiana Fever executed a massive multi-team trade. On paper, it looked like a standard basketball transaction. The Fever sent Nalissa Smith to Dallas and a draft pick to Connecticut. In exchange, they got Sophie Cunningham from Phoenix. At the time, the front office sold this as a basketball fit. General manager Amber Cox talked about spacing. She talked about how Sophie was a 37% three-point shooter who would grease the wheels of the offense and give Caitlin Clark room to breathe. They said they wanted a veteran presence. They said they wanted a competitor. But looking back, that trade was a Trojan horse. The Fever thought they were acquiring a role player who could hit open corner threes. Instead, they imported a media dynamo who would completely co-opt the team's narrative. Cunningham's arrival wasn't just about basketball, it was a cultural importation. She immediately leaned into her return to Midwest culture. She's a Missouri native, and she charmed the Indiana fan base instantly by talking about how happy she was to leave Phoenix for a place that appreciated, and I quote, scalloped potatoes and meatloaf. It sounds funny, but that cultural alignment was strategic. It endeared her to the fan base immediately, creating fertile ground for her subsequent rise to viral stardom. But the scalloped potatoes were just the appetizer. The main course was violence. The critical inflection point for Cunningham's brand, the moment she transitioned from teammate to mythological protector, occurred on June 17, 2025. If you are writing the history of the modern WNBA, you circle this date in red ink. The Fever were playing the Connecticut Sun. Now, if you followed Caitlin Clark's career, you know the narrative. Caitlin Clark versus the world. For 2 years, the story was that the rookie sensation was being physically targeted by jealous veterans, and the Fever were too passive to do anything about it. Fans were frustrated. They were tired of seeing their star get pushed around. The game against the Sun was a physical bloodbath. In the third quarter, Connecticut guard J.C. Sheldon poked Clark in the eye. Moments later, Marina Mabrey delivered a hard foul that sent Clark crashing to the floor. The refs called technicals, but nobody got tossed. The Fever bench was simmering. The crowd was agitated. Fast forward to the final minute. The Fever are up by 17 points. This is garbage time. The game is over. Usually players just dribble out the clock and go home. But Sophie Cunningham hadn't forgotten the third quarter. With 47 seconds left, JC Sheldon drove to the basket. Sophie Cunningham abandoned all basketball protocol. She didn't make a play on the ball. She didn't try to block the shot. According to reports and the video that broke the internet, she pulled Sheldon's hair and dragged her down to the floor. It was ugly, it was violent, and it was exactly what the internet wanted. The officials immediately assessed a flagrant 2 foul. Cunningham was ejected on the spot. A scrum broke out. It was chaos. But the most crucial detail of this entire saga didn't happen on the court. It happened in the locker room, away from the cameras. Cunningham later revealed this interaction on her podcast, and it is the key that unlocks the Bodyguard narrative. She said that when she walked into the locker room after being thrown out, she expected a lecture. Instead, Caitlin Clark was waiting for her. And Clark wasn't mad. She was relieved. Clark reportedly looked at her and said, "Finally, finally someone else stands up for me." And Cunningham's response? 2 words, "Dude, I got you." That exchange fundamentally altered the team dynamic in the public eye. For nearly 2 years, the narrative had been that Clark was alone on an island. By committing a flagrant foul in a game that was already won, Cunningham sent a message that the principle of protecting the star was more important than the game itself. This is the classic enforcer contract. We've seen it in the NBA with guys like Rick Mahorn and Charles Oakley. We see it in hockey with Marty McSorley. But we had never seen it so explicitly in the WNBA. Cunningham filled a market gap. She became the Fever enforcer. And in the digital economy, controversy is currency. Cunningham and her management team didn't apologize. They didn't issue a somber statement about sportsmanship. They recognized the value of the villain duality she had created, and they monetized it immediately. The metrics following that ejection were staggering. In the days following the fight, Cunningham gained 700,000 followers on TikTok. Her Instagram surged by nearly 250,000 people, pushing her over the 1 million mark. Her jersey sold out within 24 hours. Marketing experts estimated that this single act of aggression generated approximately $1 million in brand equity. Rather than hiding, Cunningham leaned into the persona. She publicly stated, "I've worked my whole life to become a WNBA basketball player, and now people know me as WWE." She even posted a video lip-syncing Selena Gomez's "Hands to Myself," captioned with a cheeky note about how the sound was too fitting. It was a masterclass in media literacy. She turned a disciplinary moment into a meme, proving that she understood the modern sports cycle better than almost anyone in the league. But while the enforcer narrative united Clark and Cunningham, money eventually created a wedge, and this is where the story gets complicated. In late 2025, a new disruptor entered the chat, Project B. Unlike the unrivaled league, Project B was a 5-on-5 global league set to launch in November 2026, owned by tech entrepreneurs and former player Alana Beard. It promised to revolutionize player compensation. We're talking about multi-million-dollar deals. Salaries starting at $2 million, significantly higher than the WNBA Supermax, which sits around $240,000. Sophie Cunningham was one of the first major waves of commitments. For a player like her, a mid-tier star in terms of salary, but a high-tier star in visibility, Project B represented a life-changing financial opportunity. As she bluntly put it on a podcast, "If people are going to be paying you multi-million-dollar deals, why would you not?" It's a fair question, and it led to a fascinating recruitment pitch. Cunningham approached Caitlin Clark. She leveraged their bond, the enforcer dynamic, and tried to get Clark to join the league that would pay them millions. She revealed this on her Show Me Something podcast. She said, "I tried to get her to play in it. She was like, no." Now the media tried to spin this as a snub, but if you look deeper, Clark's blunt refusal wasn't about Sophie. It was about the differing realities of their economies. This creates a rich dad, poor dad dynamic within the team. Clark played nonstop from her senior year at Iowa, through the NCAA tournament, directly into the draft, and through a high-pressure WNBA season. Her priority is physical preservation. The opportunity cost of playing in Project B is the risk of injury. Remember the groin injury she suffered in 2025. If she gets hurt in an off-season league, she jeopardizes her primary career. Furthermore, Cunningham argued that players need these leagues for the platform. She said, "If you don't have the league, you don't have the eyes." That is true for Sophie Cunningham. She needs the WNBA or Project B to maintain relevance. But Caitlin Clark is the platform. She brings the eyes wherever she goes. She doesn't need Project B for exposure. Project B needs her. While $2 million is a massive sum for Cunningham, Clark earns an estimated $28 million from Nike alone. The marginal utility of an extra $2 million is low compared to the value of rest. So while Cunningham chased the private equity money, Clark stayed put. It wasn't a rejection of friendship. It was a collision of two completely different economic stratospheres. While Clark's camp, led by agent Aaron Kane, was fighting a war to change the WNBA itself, even suggesting the league needs to spin off from the NBA to succeed, Cunningham was opting out of the system to get paid elsewhere. It's the hustler versus the icon. But we can't talk about Sophie Cunningham's rise without addressing the elephant in the room. We have to talk about the culture war. A significant driver of Cunningham's high search volume is her polarization. She has acquired the nickname MAGA Barbie from certain segments of the internet. It's a label derived from her aesthetic. The blonde hair, the cowboy boots, the denim, and her vocal love for country culture combined with her unapologetic, feisty demeanor. In the polarized world of 2025, that aesthetic is a signal. But rather than aggressively denouncing the label or embracing it, Cunningham navigated this minefield with what experts call strategic ambiguity. In a profile for the New York Times, she addressed the assumptions about her politics by stating, "I am right in the middle." She elaborated that pop culture attempts to force people into binary extremes, but she finds herself agreeing and disagreeing with points on both sides. This centrist defense is a calculated move. It allows her to retain the support of the conservative sports fans who view her as a counterculture icon to the perceived woke WNBA, while not explicitly alienating the progressive base of the league. It maintains the friction that drives engagement without resulting in cancellation. However, not every branding attempt lands. In one of the few cringe moments of her ascent, Cunningham attempted to nickname herself White Chocolate in a TikTok comment section. The internet response was swift and mocking. Headlines read, "You are not white chocolate. You will never be white chocolate." It was a rare miss, but even the misses drove engagement. Cunningham's rise wasn't just accidental, it was fueled by her transition from athlete to content machine. Her podcast became a headline generator, proving she knew exactly how to hack the algorithm. Take the Travis Kelce controversy. In a single hot take, she managed to cross-pollinate her audience with the massive NFL and Taylor Swift fan bases. Discussing Kelce, she remarked, "Travis is 36? That is pretty old for football. I was thinking 30, 31, or 32 would be pretty old for football." That comment enraged Chiefs fans and Swifties. It generated a wave of engagement from outside the WNBA bubble. Whether calculated or accidental, it expanded her search radius significantly. Then there was the 8th grade boys debate. In perhaps her most polarizing basketball take, Cunningham agreed with NBA player Michael Porter Jr.'s assertion that a team of elite 8th grade boys could beat a WNBA team. She stated, "If they are future pros, unless you're a late bloomer, you're already pretty big. Men are just stronger, bigger, athletic, so if you put them up against females, yeah, they're gonna win." This is absolute rage bait gold. It validates the arguments of WNBA detractors while coming from a WNBA player herself. It creates a pick-me narrative that drives fierce debate in comment sections, boosting the video's algorithmic performance to the moon. She even went to war with the officials, getting fined $1,500 for criticizing them on her podcast, asking, "When it is a simple call right in front of your face multiple times, what are you doing?" She then publicly dismissed the fines as a joke, reinforcing her rebel status. Finally, we have to talk about the aesthetics, the tunnel walk. In 2025, the walk from the team bus to the locker room became a fashion runway and a primary content vertical. Cunningham utilized this space to visually distinguish herself from Clark. While Caitlin Clark stuck to a sporty, functional, Nike-sponsored all-business vibe, Cunningham went full main character. Before Game 5 of the semifinals, despite being injured with an MCL tear, Cunningham arrived wearing an oversized St. Louis Blues hockey jersey as a dress. This was a masterstroke of branding. It connected her hockey goon enforcer style on the court with her visual identity, while also shouting out her Missouri roots. She coordinated matching Howdy Cowboy crop tops with teammate Lexi Hull. On opening weekend, she wore a daring, sheer, all-black outfit that media outlets described as stealing Caitlin Clark's thunder. Every outfit was a headline. Every outfit was a thumbnail. This focus on fashion ensured that even when she played poorly or didn't play at all due to injury, she remained in the conversation. So what does this all mean? What is the conclusion of the Cunningham-Clark dynamic? The Sophie Cunningham phenomenon signals a broader trend in professional sports, the rise of the content sidekick. Just as Draymond Green leveraged his proximity to Steph Curry to build a media empire, Cunningham is leveraging her proximity to Clark. She provides what the superstar cannot. Clark has to be polished, Cunningham can be controversial. Clark has to be the hero, Cunningham can be the villain. Clark has to stay above the fray, Cunningham can get in the mud. Cunningham is not just a player, she is a media heat shield for Caitlin Clark, absorbing the controversy so Clark can remain pristine. This symbiosis is the true secret behind the Fever's digital dominance. Caitlin Clark will go down as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. But Sophie Cunningham? She might go down as the WOT, the wiliest of all time, the smartest player in the game of attention. And in 2025, winning the game of attention is the only championship that the internet cares about. The brilliance of this dynamic is that it doesn't just work on Instagram, it works on the golf course too, and this is the piece of the puzzle most analysts miss. To understand why Caitlin Clark trusts Sophie Cunningham with her life on the court, you have to look at where they spend their time off it. If you scroll past the viral tunnel fits and the podcast clips, you start to see a different pattern emerging: the golf content. It seems trivial, right? Just two teammates hitting the links. But in the world of high-stakes professional sports, golf is the sanctuary. It's the one place where the noise stops. We saw them constantly throughout the summer of 2025, driving carts, roasting each other's swings, and betting on putts. This wasn't just teammates hanging out, it was a vetting process. Clark is notoriously private. Her circle is tighter than a drum. For Cunningham to be allowed into that inner sanctum, to be the person holding the camera while Clark tees off, signals a level of trust that goes beyond locker room buddies. It suggests that the bodyguard role isn't just a bit for the cameras, it's a genuine alliance. Clark knows that Cunningham is the one person who doesn't want to be her. Cunningham is happy being the loud, chaotic foil to Clark's stoic greatness. And that lack of jealousy is the rarest commodity in a locker room filled with competitive alpha females. This alliance forces us to ask a difficult question about the future of the Indiana Fever. As we look toward the 2026 season, the front office faces a unique dilemma. Usually you build a roster based on efficiency ratings, win shares, and shooting percentages. But how do you value a human heat shield? If you look strictly at the box score, Sophie Cunningham is replaceable. There are younger players who shoot better. There are faster defenders. But if you cut Sophie Cunningham, do you break the psychological safety net of your franchise player? The Fever management knows that the Clark economy relies on Caitlin staying healthy and staying sane. If paying Sophie Cunningham a premium to be the team's unofficial bouncer keeps Caitlin Clark comfortable, that is a bargain at twice the price. It's an insurance policy. You don't pay for insurance hoping to use it. You pay for it so you can sleep at night. And let's be honest, the fans have already cast their vote. The Sophie stans are now a distinct political party within the WNBA ecosystem. Go to a Fever game and you'll see the split. The little girls in the number 22 jerseys are there for the logo threes and the no-look passes. But the college kids, the rowdy section in the upper deck, they are wearing Cunningham jerseys. They are waiting for the scuffles. They are waiting for someone to get shoved so they can watch Sophie sprinting from the weak side to escalate the situation. This bifurcation of the fan base is healthy. It creates a wrestling-style atmosphere where you have the babyface Clark and the tweener Cunningham working in tandem. It turns every game into a narrative event. You aren't just watching basketball, you're watching a buddy cop movie unfolding in real time. So where does this leave us as we stare down the barrel of the next season? We are looking at a league that has fundamentally changed. The Sophie Cunningham model is going to be replicated. Every team with a fragile superstar is going to go out looking for their own Sophie. We're going to see a rise in content enforcers. Players sign not for their jump shot, but for their ability to go viral while protecting the asset. Caitlin Clark changed the geometry of the court. Sophie Cunningham changed the geometry of the fame. And as the Fever gear up for another run, with Project B looming in the background and the MAGA Barbie discourse constantly simmering, one thing is certain: the camera might start on Caitlin Clark, but it's going to end on Sophie Cunningham. Because in the attention economy, the person who starts the fire is interesting, but the person who pours gasoline on it, that's the person you can't take your eyes off.